All right, so today we are going to look at setting up a SensoPart vision camera to look for basically quarter 20 nuts, just for fun. So we're going to start the camera and then we're going to open the software, and we've selected the camera that we want to use. We now have this open. Now, I've already done a little bit of work, but let's just go ahead and delete it and we'll start over. So if we delete this job, and we do a new job, we'll select the area that we want to be working in. So we want to be looking at most of this whole box just so we can count them and see them and move them around. Our shutter speed, we can do auto. That's going to take a couple pictures and let us know what it looks like. And we can also just verify that our working distance is okay. So if it was blurry or didn't look quite right, the camera can do its own auto detection and figure out the working distance. So we figured out the working distance, we figured out the shutter speed, although I know that I want it to be a little bit more washed out than that, just so that we can see the edges that we're looking for. So we're actually going to bring this up a little bit, and as you can see, things are kind of changing where we're now getting a darker edge, and that's what we're going to be looking for in the next part. So now that we have these sort of three nuts, we've played with our shutter speed, our working distance. We are going to do a trigger just because we are going to send this information to a PLC later. So trigger mode is trigger so that only when we send it the trigger command does the camera actually flash and take a photo. We can turn on and off the illumination, and then you can turn off different quadrants as well. There is also an external illumination trigger if you had an external light, which you sometimes need depending on the application. So now that we've got this job, we're going to go to detectors. There's all kinds. We can look for data codes, barcodes. We can look for contours and pattern matching. We've got a little bit of AI for classification. We can do some measurements with calipers if you were to calibrate the robot using a target plate, which will be a later video. And then we can do some regular inspection stuff. What we're going to do is we're going to do a contour check. So we're going to load this up. We're going to say we need to look in this big area just so we don't miss any when we're playing around on the table. And then we need to pick one object to look at. So if we take this and we line it up here, and then we go ahead and get the alignment more or less lined up with the nut, then we can start to play a little bit with the photo. So we'll bring this photo down to a more reasonable size. So now we're looking at an actual nut. So what we can do is we can go to edit region. We can make this box a bit bigger just so we can see. And what we can do is we can zoom in on that. So I'm going to switch over to a circle. I am going to remove all the pixels, and then instead of removing pixels, I'm going to add pixels. So we'll change my cursor size to be something that we can follow this line with, because that's the edge that we're going to want to be looking for going forward. So we'll just go ahead and trace this teal line around. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you just want to leave, you don't want any stray teal lines, and you just want to collect all the ones along the edge. Now there is some adjustments we can make, like how perfect does this edge have to be in order for us to classify it as an object, what threshold, those things. But for right now, we're just going to select this whole outer edge. We're going to hit OK. And then I'm actually going to lock it. That way I don't accidentally change anything. Now, if you'll notice, we only have one object. If we go to multiple objects, turn on multiple objects, say that there's a maximum of 10, and the sorting criteria is by score, position, angle, scaling, we're going to go by score, and the order is ascending or descending. So now we found 3 objects. If I were to put another couple onto the table and hit single image trigger, Now you'll notice we have 4 objects, and I have one that kind of made it off the screen. If we slide that one back in and add another, we can do single image trigger, and now we end up with a total of 6 objects. Now, as I was saying, there are some things that you can play with. So you could change the threshold. So only if it was a 91% match or higher would it actually output that as a valid object. We can open up that window a little bit because most of our objects are going to be roughly the same. We can also change the angle range and the scale range. So the scale would be if they're slightly larger or slightly smaller. We could say that, if it's slightly smaller or slightly larger, it's still a good target and we can find it or we can ignore it. So we've just quickly set this up. Again, we're looking for a contour and then we're looking for the number of nuts. As far as the output goes, for most projects, it's going to be semicolon as a start and semicolon as a separator. That's what most things are going to be looking for. Now you can write your own program to look for anything and you can set this up any way you want. But what we have is we have a start and a separator character. After that, we need to add things to our output. So we could say detector 1, send me the score. Now it's going to send me the score of detector 1, which is our nuts. So it's going to send me the highest score, which is 99.7. If we had another one, we could say detector 1, and we could actually say how many valid objects were there. And then it would just kick out the number of valid objects. The other thing I should mention about score is a lot of times we only want the first result. So if you say that there's only number of results, then you're only going to get the score for the first result. If you leave that at 0, it's going to send you as many scores as it found. So you just have to be prepared for that as the output. If you're doing something like robotics, you could go to detector 1 and you could actually ask for the pose 3D, and then that will send you the entire pose of that first nut. And then once you get all that set up, it's just simply a matter of starting the sensor. And then once the sensor started, we can go ahead and trigger a whole bunch of images, and we can add and remove nuts. We could flip a couple up on their side and notice that they don't get picked because they don't have the right contour. We could put them upside down. We could put one on top of each other. And you'll notice we're still only getting the objects that match the full profile. Now this one, we are missing this little bit of edge. But if you notice, it's the third score, so it's only an 83. If we changed the allowable score, if we stopped the sensor and went back to detectors, we could change the threshold range so that we miss that one that's covered. So we're saying only if it has a score of, say, 85 or better, do we actually output that, and then we won't see the one that's covered. So just a quick overview on setting up a SensoPart camera. This is doing the contour check. We'll do some more other detectors at a later date.